Welcome. Storytellers and Changemakers with Emebasi is a podcast that explores the stories and strategies of successful founders, experts, and changemakers. In each episode, we'll be diving into the world of online entrepreneurship, where people are creating businesses and programs that change the way we live, work, and play. And here is your host, Emebasi.
You ready?
Let's do it.
Welcome to Storytellers and Changemakers. And today I am so pleased to be talking to Becca Mai. Becca is a systems person and she came highly recommended when I mentioned to a friend of mine that I needed somebody to come and teach us about systems at our upcoming Freelancer to CEO Virtual Summit. She actually works in the wedding industry and she helps people to automate and streamline their businesses. And she's going to be helping us, talking to us during the summit. But today we are going to get to know you. So can you introduce yourself? Tell us about you.
Hi, y'all. I am Becca Mai. I am a business strategist for wedding pros, and I am also an inclusive wedding planner for Amazing Humans. And I'm actually based just outside of Washington, D.C. in the U.S., so not too far from the capital.
Okay, I was actually just going to ask whereabouts are you? Oh, great. Okay. Do you work from home?
I do work from home. My husband also works from home, so he occasionally goes into the office maybe once a month. So a lot of times we're both working from home and it can be a little cramped in, a condo unit with both of us and two dogs. So sometimes I'll work at the coffee shop just to kind of get out because I love my partner to death, but he is in the 9 to 5 world, so a very different realm than me. And he, again, bless his heart, but he really likes to bother me.
Oh, don't they all?
Right.
Yeah, I went to visit my aunt. This is just by the way. I went to visit my aunt in Denmark, and my husband kept calling. He called, and she was telling everybody, he calls 6 times a day. He calls.
It's like
she
we
just
love
found it
them.
so strange. Yeah, we do.
We love them.
Yeah.
We do. We promise. It's just,
Yeah.
when you're trying to concentrate, it can be a little,
It's
bothersome.
different. Yeah. I mean, there's some people that can work, they can work with noise and distractions and interruptions and all that. But, like now I've had to lock everybody out of the kitchen, just so that I can do this. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm like, take your food, take whatever you need because nothing's happening here until we're done.
Yep. This is what's happening.
Okay. So like I told you, I have a bunch of questions for you. Let me start with, so tell me about the kind of work that you do for people. When do they come to you and say, oh, Becca, we really need you? Or, when does what's happening with them when somebody says to them, oh, you need to talk to Becca?
Yeah. So, a lot of my clients, they'll typically come to me either one, when they're first starting out their business and kind of unsure of where to go and how to start because there's no rule book, there's no
Yeah.
these are the proper steps that you do. It's a
Yeah.
lot of, fly by the seat of your pants. So, when they come to me and they're first starting out their business, it's to really set them up for success at the very forefront. Or they've been in business for years and years and they're looking to grow or grow out their team or expand. And they're right at that kind of precipice of they're at that plateau, but want to move forward off that plateau. So they're kind of unsure of where to go from there and how to build out a team. So that's typically the clients that will kind of come to me in needing help to streamline, automate, and organize their business. So my kind of mentality towards it is automate, not auto send, because
What do you mean by that? Say more
Yeah,
words.
so I automate with hospitality 100% in mind. So, you're still creating a very tailored and customized experience for every single client that's kind of coming through your door, and not feeling robotic because nobody wants to be talking to robots. So you can still automate things, but not auto send
Okay.
because a lot of times when
So
you
you still
auto
make it
send, it
feel
doesn't feel as
personal.
tailored. Hmm.
Yeah. So you still make it personal for the people that they're serving. Make
Exactly,
it personal.
exactly. And because my niche is in the wedding industry, it's really, really critical that, these clients and these couples feel important.
Definitely. Definitely. So at any point in time, how many clients would you have on the go?
Typically I will take anywhere between, 3 to 6 clients at any given time. And our projects last anywhere between 2 to 6 plus months because I actually do, kind of automation organization and streamlining your business at a pace that actually works for my clients. Because a lot of wedding pros, this is their side hustle. This isn't their full commitment, or it may be their full commitment, but then they also have a lot going on in their personal life too. So they're trying to juggle a lot of things. And adding on to focusing on your business is just another obstacle for them. So I really try to do it over a course of time so that it feels more manageable, as well as enables them to really focus on it more, and absorb the information that's coming. Because us as humans, we actually only have like a 90% um, kind of like intake. And then after
Yeah.
90 minutes, it just like goes right over our head,
Yeah. Yeah. That's
so
true.
that's why it's kind of important to do it in increments and sessions so that they can really absorb the information.
I see what you mean. I see what you mean. So do you
Hmm.
find that you take each client through the same stages every time, or is each client different
Yeah,
with
so we'll go through the
activity
initial
all that?
stages. The onboarding process is very similar, as well as kind of going through the initial stages of kind of setting up the hard collateral. So hard collateral for me is more internal collateral, so things that are stored in, your cloud storage or your Drive or Dropbox. That are actually more resources for your team. Those are typically always the same. But then it's always different because every business is different, every business is unique. So we actually tailor all of this to your business in the way that you operate.
Okay, so which brings me back to the question I should have asked from the beginning, which is
Yeah.
how do you get to be an automated streamlining person?
Oh,
Automated streamlining person.
how did you become me?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think the biggest thing is I've actually been doing this for many years. So without through the wedding industry, I've worked with a lot of different venues, a lot of different catering companies, a lot of different businesses. And throughout my
So
time,
in the
I've
wedding industry, were you
Mhm.
a provider as well? Were you in the wedding industry yourself before you?
Yes, yes. Hmm.
What were you doing?
So I was a wedding planner.
I see. Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. I see.
Yeah, and I'm
Oh,
still a
wow.
wedding planner, so I still plan weddings because I can't get away from it. I just love
Ah,
it.
it's good. It's really good. I mean, like, I know I'm complaining every step of the way, but I'm actually enjoying so much planning this virtual summit. It's just so
It's
nice
so
to
much
see
fun
everything.
planning.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
really
to
is.
see it come together. Yeah. So, question: how has your business changed since you first started? And
Ooh,
where do you see your business going?
yeah. Yeah, well, it was okay. So the reason on actually why I started my business is actually because of my medical condition. So I actually have MS. I was diagnosed in the summer of 2019. And so I knew I wasn't going to be able to do wedding planning for a very it for like a long term necessarily. So I wanted to help out wedding pros. So that's actually why I started my business, was to help them. And what I constantly heard throughout, my years in my career is that, like, oh my gosh, you're really great at, setting up systems and training
Mm.
programs and things like that. So for me, it was just like second nature to become a business strategist for wedding pros, because I was so accustomed to setting up very black and white policies, but also hospitality lives in the gray. But our wedding pros need to understand, and creatives need to understand, that you need that black and white line in order to have hospitality so that you can move and flow through with
I love that. I love
parameters.
that word. I love that you use that word hospitality to describe
Hmm.
what what you're trying to achieve with each client.
Yeah,
So you mentioned that you're dealing or living with an invisible illness, one of the MS. Um,
correct.
how does it? Because this is about freelancer to CEO, and I think many of us work with limitations. So either it's like
Correct.
side hustle, so you have just the evenings and the weekends and to do the work and at night, or it is you're just you're working alone, you're a solopreneur, so you have those limitations. How do you what do you do to manage your I don't know, do you have flare ups, or how do you manage your business with that, with those kind of limitations?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, I think that's why a lot of entrepreneurs get into the business and start their own business, is to have flexibility and to have freedom, to create their own schedules and to work the hours that they want to work. But what a lot of people don't realize is they're like, oh, I'm going to get out of my 9 to 5 so I can work less. And it's like, no, that's not actually true. You end up
Not
actually
really.
working more.
I
You end up
know,
working more on your business,
I
because you're
know.
passionate about it and because you love it. And so, for me, that was one of the reasons on why I opened up my business, is because I needed flexibility. I couldn't go to a venue
Nine
or
to
a catering
five.
company and ask them, hey, so can I take a nap in the middle of the day?
My God.
Like, that's just not really realistic, because a
Yeah,
lot of times I do
yeah.
need to take a nap to recharge my body so that I can
Mm,
continue working.
mm,
So those are
mm.
some of like the limitations that I have, is that I do have a very limited time of span where I can work, or, whether it's on my feet or whether it's just, again, brain capacity. My brain capacity technically can go for like 4 to 6 hours. Then my physical capacity can go for like 6 to 8 hours. But 8 is like my ultimate, like, max, like, as far as like being physically able. And that's not realistic sometimes too on a wedding day, when you're needed anywhere between 12 to 16 hours a day. So I've kind of
Yeah.
learned to modify things. I have a team with me on wedding days so that it doesn't put as much pressure on my body. Also, they're the ones that actually close out my events for me so that I don't have to be on my feet the
Stay
whole
till
time.
the last
Then,
seat has been washed.
yeah. And then for the business strategy side, I'm super open with about my illness. I understand that not everybody may feel that way, but for me, I find that it's a lot easier to also connect with a lot of creatives, because a lot of times they're in the same boat. They just don't say it. And they're like, you know what, thank you so much for speaking about it, because
Yeah,
it's
I mean, I
not
wanted
spoken.
to say that, the same thing. Thank you for speaking out, because there are a few. I mean, I remember there was a couple of years ago, maybe 3, 4 years ago, we had this, oh, let's do a mastermind, blah, 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 let's go. And it was in person. And there were about 8 of us around the table. So we're
Hmm.
talking, and honestly, about 6 people had either an invisible illness or a sick child or something, but there are people that were friends, and we just, Pool just never, they never said anything about it. It was really, really weird. I was like, oh, you too, you too. So that's actually why why I even know that there's something called an invisible illness, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, and
Yeah.
that's also the
People
hard thing
don't
is with
say.
an Yeah, with an invisible illness, it's like people look at me and they're like, "Oh, well, you don't look disabled," and it's like, yeah, that's why it's called invisible illness because it just creeps up whenever it wants to, you know. Um,
Uh,
and like I do have limitations and I do have those things. So, I've actually managed to, create a schedule that actually works for me and
I
actually
mean,
works
that's
for my
really
couples and
very
clients.
instructive. It's really very instructive for somebody that's a freelancer. I was reading a book just not long, it's called The Money Gym by actually one of our speakers, and she talked about how people say, "Oh, I'm working a 9 to 5. I can't start a side business," and even if you're working 9 to 5, if you want to, you can because you just know that you have that. You just all you need to do is just know that you have this limitation. I can work 3 hours in the evening. I can work on Saturday mornings and Sunday evenings or whatever. So you have those limitations and you learn to plan yourself. So I'm trying to think, how does your mind work when you're working with a client? How do you like look at your client and then just see everything that they need to do and then you just step back and take them step by step,
Yeah.
or do you
Well,
have
my
to spend the
clients,
time asking
yeah.
questions or
So,
whatever?
oh, for sure. So my thing is I have a consultation package that we first start out with. So that way it's a one-time kind of fee. So that way I really get to understand them
Okay,
and their
okay,
business and like really understand what's going on, what platforms they're working, are working for them, what systems that they currently have set up. And then from there, I don't need to, I waive that fee for future projects. But that's really critical so that I have a full understanding of how they operate, how they work, how their mind works. And then from there, we get into the packages. And there's actually two
okay.
paths
So
for
your
my clients to
consultation
take.
is a paid consultation.
Correct.
Okay,
Um, and
so
then and then there's two paths for my clients to take. There's the guided implementation path,
hmm,
or there's also the curated experience path. So the guided implementation is kind of like the DIY route where
yeah,
we're working collaboratively together, but then I project manage them to make sure that they complete these items. So they're kind of doing it on their own, with guidance and mentorship. And then the curated experience path is kind of, I explain it like a five-star concierge hotel where like everything's done for you. So we work collaboratively together and then I implement all the
you
aspects
implement.
for them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people would pay a lot of money for that because that's so much value. Once you have that,
Right.
once it's set up, you have that thing that is just helping to run
And
your
you're like,
business.
great, check.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I'm looking at the time, so I'm going to ask you two more questions.
Perfect.
What
Let's dive
has,
into it.
okay, I would say, what challenges have you overcome in order to achieve success? So you've talked about that, obviously. So what would your advice be to somebody who was just starting out?
Yeah, I
Um,
think my biggest advice is creating a solid foundation for your business, so really kind of starting it off the right way so that years from now you don't have to go back and revert and like, you know, fill in all the cracks. You've already done that at the forefront so that you're ready to take the next steps in building out your team. So creating those
okay.
SOPs and standard operating procedures at the beginning is really helpful. And it's one of those things that
It's
you're going to
so
tweak and grow.
hard. So hard.
People
It's
think
so
that it's
hard.
actually really hard, but it's actually really easy once you start diving into it. You're like, oh, standard
Okay.
operating procedures sounds like a really big term and a really big word, and it feels very overwhelming. But
Yeah, it does, to be honest.
when you break it down into like more manageable pieces and like smaller bites, then you're like, oh, okay, I can knock this out and I can knock that out.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know. So what's next? What have you been working on lately? I think we'll just close out with that. What are you working on lately, or what's next for you, and how do we find you?
Yeah, so currently I'm just working with my wedding pro couples, and then I'm also have a couple weddings that are coming up that we're working on heavily with design for. So I'm really excited about that, and just trying to kind of branch into the speaking world a little bit more is actually one of my goals. So that's going to be
You're doing
something.
amazing, by the way.
Oh, thank you. So that's actually one of my goals is to dive more into speaking and education. And you can find me on my website, which is wed2you.co. That's WED, the number two, YOU.co, not .com, .co. And you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, all the same, wed2you.
Thank you, Becca Mai. So if you want to hear more from her, join us at Freelancer to CEO Virtual Summit. She will be talking about systems and she'll be taking us through like the first three things that you need to do when you are
Yep.
trying to streamline your business. So thank you so much and have a good day. Bye all.
You have been listening to the Storytellers and Changemakers podcast with Emebasi. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a minute and leave us a review. It would really help us. For show notes and links mentioned in this episode, visit emebasi.com/podcast. Thanks, and see you on the next episode where we hear more stories and strategies from amazing storytellers and change makers.